Hi there. On this webinar, we're going to take a look at GDPR and the right of access and how this can be granted using ADAPT. So when we're discussing right of access, what we really mean is anyone has the right to come to you if you've got information stored on them and to access that personal data and review that. So they can come to you and say, I want to see my own personal information you've got on me, and you must provide them with that information. Now, you must also make sure there's no delay on that. So you must provide the information back to them within 1 month. So what we've done in the ADAPT system is in the GDPR icon we've got here, we've got something called subject access request. So what this is when you run this workflow, it will send an email out to the candidate or the individual, and it will give them access to a portal where they can go and log in and view their information that you have stored on them. Just to let you know, on this particular workflow, you must have permissions to run this in the system. So these can be granted to you using the admin profile. So when you click on that, if it says you don't have permission, you'll need to speak to your administrator or you'll need to speak to client services. So if I click on this, just to show you, in here it says you can either record the request only. So basically what that does is it will date and timestamp in your journal for the candidate. It will say they requested information on them, but you haven't actually granted it to them yet. So this will then produce an email that goes to the candidate, and it will say you're basically acknowledging that they've asked for their information and you will be in touch shortly. The other option is to actually send access to the portal. So when you click on that, you can see an email is not produced, so you don't get to see the email, but it will automatically go out to the individual person and then they can then access the portal from that email. So what you'll see is in the journal, you can see access to portal sent. So you've got the evidence that you've sent the information to them here, and it'll be the name of whoever ran that action and the date and timestamp. You've also got within your pages a GDPR page, and on that it will say subject access request made and the fact you've actually sent them the portal, and it will date and timestamp that here. So as you've seen, you don't get to access that portal as the agency. It's only been built for the individuals. So what will happen is in their email, they'll be able to then activate their login and set up their own password. And they've got 5 days to then run this workflow and to do that. If they don't do it in that time, or they forget their password, they will need to contact you again, and you'll have to again run this workflow in the system and send them out a new email. What will then happen is they will have 10 days to access the portal and review their information. So when they first log in, they'll get a home page, and in that it's got certain data. So it will show them when they requested the access, when the access was approved, when they activated it, how many days they have remaining to access the portal, when they last logged in, and how many times they've logged in. They've then got different tabs they can access. So what they'll be able to see is they've got a notes section which shows all their journal activity. So they can go back and read that and review it. They've also got a tab linked to documentation. So they'll be able to see all the documents you've got attached in the document library. So as we can see here, this is their journal. So they can see all that information and scroll through. And they'll also be able to see their document library. So they'll be able to see and access and download all the documents that are in here linked to them. So one thing I'd like to draw your attention to is anything that you store in the confidential folder, that's the only folder that the individual can't then go and see. They won't be able to see this in the portal. We don't give you any advice here on what should go into that particular folder. It's completely up to you as an agency what you wouldn't want the candidate to see. And what you've got to remember is they've got the right to see everything unless it affects somebody else's GDPR as well. So for example, they have got the right to see their references, but if there's a reference stored and it has contact details to the person that provided the reference, then you're then breaching their, GDPR as well. So you might then need to put that in the confidential folder. So you'll need to decide those kind of procedures as an agency. Another thing to advise you of is you can go into the journal as a user and you can edit things that you've done. So let's give an example down here. So we can see any place where you've run a workflow and there's a pencil button, that means you can edit the notes. So if you click in, you might want to add in extra notes. Or if you put something in the system that maybe shouldn't have been put, or you put in the wrong place, again, you can edit the notes, so you can delete them, or you can add further notes. So you can see when I ran this original workflow, so creating the candidate via CV import, that was done the 2nd of November at 16:52. The extra note that I just wrote on there, it will then show the new date and timestamp. So in the portal, the candidate will be able to see that there has been a change to that journal entry. They won't know what was changed, whether something was deleted or added. All they'll know is that a change has been made. So just be aware, if you are editing things in here, they have the right to then come back to you and ask what you've changed and why. So as you can see, what we've done in the Adapt system, we've made it really easy for you to be able to send out a candidate their personal data, which is their right to request, by simply clicking on that action where you can send out a link to the portal.